Hey there, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm excited to have you here with me. We're going to be chatting with an expert in the law area today, and it's always nice to chat with someone in that area. Thanks so much for joining us here at the eShip Show. The eShip Show is really designed for all kinds of people who might be interested in entrepreneurship. So we generally talk about how people got into their areas of interest. So today, this is part of Ask the Entrepreneurship. Ask the Entrepreneur series, and we're talking to Sheila Cockburn today. It's been really fascinating to pull together an event like this, which relates to Global Entrepreneurship Week. And we want to make sure throughout this whole process, if you have questions for us, please interact with us. Leave questions in the chat box. All those things are possible and ways for us to interact with each other. We're going to be talking about how startups and entrepreneurs utilize the law at the very beginning of their ventures, and what are some of the really important things to keep in mind when it comes to this. Follow us for the rest of the week, too, for the other guests that we're going to be having. Um, and here she is, Sheila Cockburn.
Hi.
Hey, she's going to be on and chatting about her work in relationship to doing work in Canada and in the United States. Make sure you hashtag us at Ask the Entrepreneur and add us at the eShip Show. So I just wanted to thank you again for taking the time to meet with me today and chat about these things. Sheila, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So today we're going to dive into this legal area, and everyone's so intimidated by law, and they are so afraid of losing their ideas and so afraid of sort of jumping off the cliff of creating a business and all these things that seem very intimidating. And so we'll discuss some of those things today. To start out, though, I really want you to kind of share your story with us. Give us a quick intro of what you're currently working on right now and what your company is doing in terms of small businesses.
Sure. Well, that's a lot of mouthful here, but here I go. I'm originally from Montreal. I got a mechanical engineering degree and worked, and then I went to law school in New York City, and I worked through law school, trying different avenues, volunteering, working as a trademark clerk, working at the Harlem Center, trying to stop gentrification or relocation of people in Harlem. I did many different things. I even did a student work abroad program just to try different areas of law while I was in school. And that was really helpful to me. I graduated right in the middle of the downturn of 2006 to whatever 2011, and I did a federal clerkship. And through the federal clerkship, I got my bar of in Canada, in province of Ontario, and worked for the judge. And then when I came out, the downturn was still happening. Um, and I had worked as a patent attorney actually just after law school. I took the patent bar, but ultimately entrepreneurship called me, and I love the arts. So a lot of my friends were trying to produce movies or were doing plays or theater. So I helped them out, and in conjunction got my SAG-AFTRA card, did a little acting. It was fun. It was a good time. And I've always been a jack of all trades, or a Jill of all trades, I guess I should say. So, I'm a serial entrepreneur, had many different types of business. So I expanded out. I started, like I said, my first clients were my friends or family, or people that would refer me to do business law, and it just kept growing. I even was in a partnership for one point, doing a lot of international work, and I continue to do that and foster partnerships with different legal professionals or professional services when I can. I have a law practice in Canada. I do law here. I often refer work to other lawyers. They refer work to me. Sometimes we do joint ventures to get larger contracts. But now I have a lot of commercial clients. Most of my clients are commercial clients, meaning I guess small businesses today would, especially in New York City, is anyone under, I guess, a revenue of about $5 million and less than about 75 employees or less. So that's kind of my customer base. I
Mhm.
have landlords who own real estate. I have nonprofits. I have individuals doing a startup coming from overseas, wanting to start a company here. And then I do have some individuals who are employees of some of these companies, or just individuals here who need immigration help. My practice consists of employment law, immigration, and just general, what they call general counsel, being the outside counsel for small companies who need a legal counsel. So every day is different. Every day I wake up and I can't even tell you what is going to happen. I have to put it, I'm so glad with the iPhone, put it in my calendar to help me keep track of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's the life of an entrepreneur too. You're constantly kind of looking at the pieces of your life and kind of putting them together in different ways and looking for different ways to make the business grow or to satisfy the client more.
Correct.
And it sounds like you're doing that on quite a scale when it comes to small businesses. In New York City, there's so many of us.
Correct. Correct.
So you really have a chance to really dig into this space and become one of the well-known people in this area. And that's why it's so exciting to chat with people like you who are running in the legal framework. A lot of the students have questions about how do I protect my idea?
Right.
And do I have to protect my idea?
Okay. Yes and no. Of course, we all want to make sure nobody takes it. But if it never gets to market and you're not making money, your idea is going nowhere. And so when you're pitching, it's not to reveal like some super secret that's the key to your product. But you do, as a person coming in, you most of the time they're looking for funding or they're looking for co-founders to help them launch their product. You do have to reveal quite a bit. And most of the time, the people that you're worried about coming to market to take your idea are looking somewhere else. That's why a lot of the companies you see say they're disruptive. They're trying to disrupt a very large company that's maybe slow moving by taking something and changing it, making it more responsive. So most of the time, I would say 90% of entrepreneurs should not be worried about their secrets. It's about getting funding and getting to market and trying to get clients that will pay you on a recurring basis. If you're
What
working for, the Department of Defense on some real secret project, that's something different. But I would say about 95% of the people are not that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And a lot of small businesses, right? They have these ideas and they're excited to have the idea and they really feel enthusiastic about it. And I always tell them it's really important to do something with that idea right away and start taking steps. Otherwise, you lose momentum.
Right.
What are some of the beginning legal steps that they could take?
Well, you could always have a contract, especially if you're dealing with other people that you want to do IT work or computer work or programming. Someone who's at your same level is to have them sign an NDA and to have them work on a server that you control, so that might be one way to do it. But if you're talking about dealing with a company like, I don't know, like a Salesforce, or going to an angel investor where you're requiring money, or going to a big company to collaborate. A lot of times they're not going to want to sign an NDA, and you're the small fish asking, the big fish for something. And a lot of times they see so many ideas. They go through hundreds of ideas per year. It's highly unlikely that they're willing to take yours and expound on it unless it's directly related to what they do. So most of the time, I find it's not even a factor because a lot of times trying to get to market is hard enough. I mean, that's the crux of it. We all have ideas, but actually getting it on the shelf is a totally different story.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. It's so true. I'm working with a product right now, and it's like getting it on the shelf is something that we're constantly going, okay, we need prototype 2 now. So what are we going to do with prototype 2?
Right, right.
At least you got prototype 1 done, though. That was like I was like, yes.
Right, right.
When you're talking about a couple of big questions were, what can I sue other people if they start using my idea?
Of course, we're in America, you can sue for almost anything. But litigation is extremely expensive on both sides. So do you have the money? Because, it's very rare that someone will take litigation on contingency, a lawyer, maybe personal injury. Litigation cases take place where there's a third party payer, like an insurance company or other person who can pay, or you're rich or something. But otherwise, to have litigation, it takes years, can take years, and can be very costly. So it's not the best way to go. It's always best to, I guess, use NDAs up front, non-disclosure agreements up front, to try to protect yourself as best you can, but also to negotiate and make sure you're negotiating and paying the person that you're working with well. And it doesn't have to be money. It can be recognition. It could be a title. It can be a part owner in your company. You have to realize that people who are expending services for you also want to have some sort of remuneration. So a lot of times it's about the lack of remuneration or the lack of recognition.
Sure, sure. Uh, Everyone, and the other reason why, and I totally echo what you're saying about it's more important to just get your idea done and started working and out the door than it
With
is to
clients.
other people taking it. And when everyone else is busy with their stuff, they really don't have time to take your idea. Like, I don't have time to go, oh, that's a really great idea. I think I'm going to do that instead of teach my 4 or 5 classes that I have to teach this semester. Yeah, I think I'll do that.
Especially if it's not in your wheel well. If you're in help, like this is what I found with investors, even trying to get money. If they're interested in healthcare, and the idea that comes along to do with shoes or fashion or water, they will not fund it because it's just not their expertise. And so nobody is really going to take your idea if it's not in their expertise, because that's just a learning curve that nobody wants these days.
Yeah. So, should people use their personal assets to run their business and keep everything kind of in the personal realm, or how do they set up their business initially?
Most people do start as sole proprietors. That's just the fact that most companies don't get funded. And if you do want to try, a lot of companies do have to use their personal credit or their savings to launch their business. And that's what happens. Now we have crowdfunding, but it's a very new space still. And, some people try that. Some people try friends and family rounds, or trying to get an accredited investor, a small accredited investor, to help fund them. But those are avenues that I would say for a new venture is not feasible for many companies. So you are taking a chance. I know people who've uh, gone in their IRA or their 401k to help them fund their idea, or even put a lien or a loan on their house, or the rainy day fund. So it is a reality of being an entrepreneur, because not only do you have to fund your company, you got to pay your personal expenses, your rent, your food, all sorts of stuff. That doesn't stop.
Right, right. And when you think about those things too, what what's really important? Do you have to have that LLC? Do you highly recommend it 99% of the time?
It depends. If you're doing a product, like a hard product, or you're doing something where there's a lot of liability, like Uber has a lot of liability because it's vehicles. There's a lot of accidents, and personal injury may is a high factor. So you want to do an LLC for something like that. If it's an app, and it's just a technology, a service where you're typing, when you get money, it's best to do a company as quickly as you can. But a lot of times people are just trying to get their MVP done, or the first beta, the first prototype done, and somehow try to find a monetization for it.
Mhm.
So there's different ways. You can do a DBA to try to secure your name. So, the cost of filing, especially in New York City, filing a company doesn't necessarily have to be expensive, but it can be. The LLC requirements require publishing, and an LLC to form can be extremely expensive for an entrepreneur starting off with no clients and no revenue.
All right. What do you think those are? What's in your mind? What's the cheapest way for someone to get started in that space as far as setting up their business?
Well, a sole proprietor with a DBA is one way, or a partnership if you have more than one person. Setting up a corporation. If you want to do a nonprofit, setting up a nonprofit. If you can find a fiscal sponsor, some people do that while they're setting up their nonprofit, which allows them to generate some revenue. If you can form the LLC, especially if you have other people with you, other partners or co-founders that are going to be joining, then the cost can be, offset because you have multiple people. So it just depends, but an LLC is very popular because most people find it flexible. But a lot of investors want the corporation.
Yeah. Yeah, they really do.
Yeah.
And just to give you a question right along those lines, legally, what should people consider before taking on investors?
Right. Investors want to see that you have some traction. They also want to see that you put some skin in the game, your own money. And they want to see that you have a client base. That's, I mean, the reality today. Before, having a client didn't seem so important, but now they ask, a lot of them want to see some sort of revenue or some sort of subscription model today. And they also want to see responsible founders. Somehow the founders are doing something to show that they are the expert, they know what they're talking about, and that they instill confidence. So most investors are investing not in the company or in the idea, but in the people. So really, it's about knowing your product or what you're trying to sell. Also knowing a good pitch. Make sure your pitch is concise, that you practice it, and you have different lengths: a minute pitch, a 3-minute pitch. And you also have to know who you're talking to. Are you talking to someone who is marketing and advertising? They want to hear something different than someone who is more into production. So you also have to know your audience.
Yeah, yeah. And as far as, would a legal contract help protect them when it comes to the investor relationship, or how should that happen legally?
Well, if you get a investor interested and they want to give you money, at that point, that's when you start to sign some sort of contract to outline what your what your responsibilities will be for taking that money. What are they expecting of you? Because a lot of investors want not only a return on their money, but they want an exit. So they want to know how long it's going to be in your mind that you have to use the money to get to the next level, to become profitable. And so you have to have a financial outlook, projections of at least a couple of years. 3 years is usually standard to give to most investors. And you have to have some way. Sometimes they want equity. Sometimes they want to give you a loan. Sometimes they want a convertible note. It's up to the investor, and the investor is making those decisions about you and how they think that you can execute your plan and bring your product to market if they think it's going to be feasible. So depending on their thoughts, the amount of money or time um, is what is the most important thing. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs forget about that. It's not just about the money. For me, I would think to look for an investor who wants to spend time mentoring you, opening doors, introducing you to other people in your market. And sometimes that's even more valuable than the money.
Yeah, I just thought of a question, but I have one more follow-up to that. How do you think people should protect, like, their name, their trademark? Should they spend a lot of time on that and making sure that those things are really locked down?
Right.
What's the advice there?
Um, you can always go online and check to see if someone is using a trademark you're thinking of using. You can do a simple search at the USPTO. Again, it's a matter of cost. If you're an entrepreneur and you have a budget, then filing a trademark is feasible. But again, everything costs money. A lot of times, you can use stuff in the market, and you can um, by the use of it and by repeating it and using it on your logo, on your website, on your marketing material, you can build a marketplace and say you're using it in the market. And that's sort of a protection because you kind of have a date when you started to speak or using these words or these phrases. And when you get money, because a trademark, is not as expensive as a patent. It can be done for under $1,000. So for some people, that's not very expensive. But for other companies, when you're just starting and your budget is $1,000, you don't want to spend all of it on a trademark.
Right. Right. Yeah. and really figuring out where those resources go. The good news for a lot of the students who take the classes here at BMCC is they learn those sort of fundamental pieces, like, okay, this is my budget, these are my costs, this is my expenses, this is what it looks like. Here's how this all plays out in an actual spreadsheet, and what these things mean in numbers wise. So it's great that the legal side of it kind of supports that in some ways, because certain things are so expensive to do.
Right.
So legally keeps people from doing those things right out of the gate.
And my
Uh,
practice is a little unique. I try to do a win-win situation for everybody because, again, it's about launching the product and getting it out there so that you have a client to build a client base, which may take some time. So, as a lawyer, I'm very, with my experience and being an entrepreneur and being, an expertise in different STEM areas, I understand that. And I try to push people for collaborations. And that also helps too, like someone to open market. Sometimes it's not just about the money, it's about getting access to things or people or markets that you don't know about.
Talk to me a little bit about that. You definitely piqued my interest there when you're talking about the collaborations and the way that lawyers can actually help facilitate the growth of the company in some ways.
Right. I do a lot of networking. And so if I feel that I've met someone that it might be helpful to my client, I will make that connection. And people think that lawyers cost them money, but a lot of times we're making money because we are assessing your risk. I assess your risk and make sure that you stay out of trouble, which saves you money. Also, opening and giving you ideas that maybe you didn't think about as ways of generating revenue, and then introducing you to people or companies or places that may be a better space for your product than what you thought.
Yeah, yeah. The team that you assemble around you.
Hmm.
Uh, Oftentimes you'll assemble like, okay, I need an investor. Okay, I need a co-founder. But we often don't think about, okay, a lawyer would be really great to help
Right.
facilitate this too.
Right, right. And, even some people don't think, there are large banks in New York, but there are a lot of small specialty banks that people forget are here that may be interested in investing in your company. There's also hedge funds and VCs and smaller firms or even equity that might want to invest. So, people are not aware of many of the different ways that you can get someone involved in your company. It could even be a church, depending on what your product is,
Mhm.
or another
Yeah, definitely.
nonprofit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's so many ways now that nonprofits have started to diversify what they do in different situations, and partnerships and collaborations that they make with different organizations. So that's a great point.
Mhm. Yes.
When you think about your most common questions, we may have talked about some of them, but if you can think of, one or two more that people ask you on a really regular basis, and you could say, hey, here's the starting place to answer that question.
Sure. A lot of times I get a question sort of like, how do I know that this person would be a good co-founder? The other question that I get is, um, how do I pitch? What do I need to say to pitch? A lot of people are really not that great at public speaking, and doing a pitch of any length is very scary to them. But if you're going to go into this, that's one of the areas you must be able to be comfortable with, because it's not just pitching, it's to an investor, but you're talking about your invention to your clients or potential clients. Talking to it about, if you want to do a PR piece or advertising. So you have to be able to speak about what you're doing to many different types of people, not just investors, but to everybody, and to show that enthusiasm and knowledge about your product.
Yeah, and as a lawyer, one of the things that you learn in law school is to be an orator, to
That's right.
make an argument, to put things together in a logical way and make sense. So it totally
Correct.
makes sense that you would get that question a lot from various
Yes.
people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, with the co-founder one, it's about not only can they do what you want, but what is your relationship to them? Do you have good rapport with them? Can you speak to them? If you're asking them a question or a concern, how do they respond to you? Because you're going to be working with this person sometimes 24/7, you know. So, their skill level sometimes may be hard to determine. That might come out later. But do they have a complementary set of skills that you lack? So if you're not good at decision making, you might want a co-founder that's very objective, and can lay out a plan, and speak about it. Or if you have someone who's very good at Excel and you're really terrible at it, so you want sometimes someone who complements your skills where you lack as well. But communication between the two of you is key. You have to be able to speak and speak freely about any topic with your co-founder, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. As we come to the end of this session so fast, like so many questions came in, and
Gosh.
all kinds of students had questions too. I kind of rolled some of those into the questions that I had for you. All my students always come up with the greatest questions. So I'll ask one of the questions that I found particularly charming and interesting, which was, why would you have gone into this space of legal services? What drew you to it? What really inspired you to be in this space?
Oh, wow. That is a really good question. Um, the space I was in before was very engineering tech heavy, very data driven. And the thing that I liked about the law was that it brought in people in terms of perspective, of social perspective. And being a lawyer gives you a different way of thinking about words and about the placement of words and what they really mean. And that perspective is invaluable. It helps me to interpret in different ways what people say. Sometimes people say a sentence and they're saying something, then they don't understand exactly what they're conveying. And in my mind, I can understand what they're conveying on 3 different levels and be able to answer that question. Because there is, the social aspect of what you're saying, the moral aspect of what you're saying, the ethical aspect of what you're saying, and the legal aspect of what you're saying. And they can be 4 different things at some times. And as a lawyer, you have to understand all of those and apply it to the situation at hand.
Oh, wow, that's great. Wow. Now I know why people want to be lawyers. Sheila, it was such a pleasure having you on our show today. And thank you so much for sharing the insights that you did with us. They
Thank
were
you.
they were very useful. And I know a lot of people are going to find value in this over time. We'll make sure to get back to you with updates on things that are happening. And we look forward to staying in touch with you.
Stay in touch. I'd love to hear from you.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us.